and we will post this back to the portal as we did with week one. So it's a resource there for everyone later today. So what we're looking to cover off today for every user that's on the call is some of the intricacies of event registration. So what we've got to cover is obviously the registration process with or without payments, members and non-members or guests, and all those different combinations. And then also some of the little intricacies we're finding at the moment about pending registrations, what that actually means to the manager as well as to the customer. And it's an important part of the system right now with COVID, with that uncertainty around running events. So you don't have to do a whole bunch of refunds. And obviously, one of the things with refunds is you will lose that payment processing fee through Stripe because they processed it. Just because it got cancelled, you don't get that back. So it protects you about hidden costs from Stripe. Well, I mean, they're not hidden, but the costs of doing payments, as well as protects your customers about having to worry where their refunds are. So the first thing we're going to look at here is registrations without payments. So of course, we're going to go to the registration center. Always a good spot to start. And we're going to work through what we want to do in terms of the setup. So obviously, we won't be ticking with credit card payments because this one is without. And we will have a player limit set here. So that could be any number you like. And what will happen there, that will enact the wait list once we've reached that 50. We can then obviously show the list of participants at registration and in the portal, and then you can put the golfers on the wait list. Now, the key with this is that will show each golfer where they are. So the wait list is always done on first in. So once, number 51, they will be that first person to take a spot if someone in the first 50 cancels. Disregard this golf link number. That's part of something else that we use with a different license, but obviously as the main license, we have every option set up in ours. So now the registration setup. So right now, this one's been set up for members. Okay, so one member to one member, meaning one member, master roster is where the members are. Okay, so within the system, if you're in the master roster, you're considered a member of the Golf Genius APAC account, and you can register yourself, and that is it. So if we were to create, register a group, now that would allow one member to register him or herself with up to 3 other members. We can then start to bring in the non-members. So if we left it at 0 and we went out to 3, we could have one up from 1 member, 2 members, 3 members, and any combination up to 3 guests. We would always try and keep this at 0. The reason is you may not want to register a guest, and this is where you need to understand these little intricacies. Now, what we see here is the permissible number of golfers in the group. And right now it says we could register a total of 7. But if the policy for the event or the round was only 4, you would untick those boxes. Now, any combination up to 4 of members and guests can be registered. And that's something that I think a lot of people sometimes miss, or the biggest mistake we do see is we see it set almost correct, but this would say that you must register a minimum of 1 member and 1 guest. So that's why with the guest, we always keep it at 0. I think there's a few people on this call that may have suffered with that minimum one, where they didn't actually want that. So that's a good little refresher there for everyone to be aware of. So that would be a fairly standard set of registration if you understanding Australian golf. 1 group, and you can limit it to up to 4 members and any number of guests up to 3, but a total number of 4 players. An interesting scenario here is if you were playing, say, a best ball event or a pairs event, you may want to make sure that you only ever get people coming in groups of 2. So you could do your registration like this. So now the permissible numbers must be 2 or 4. You can't register a single or a triple. This way you're going to get your pairs registering together. Okay, so this is another way of utilizing the system. And if it was a team scramble, you would tick it like that. You must register a total of 4 golfers, no other combinations. So again, we've got all these complexities of how do you want to make up your group, but at the end of the day, it must be 4 golfers. So hopefully that makes sense, the ticking and unticking here, to allow you that customization, as well as making sure that at the end of registration, you've got your golfers in the formats that you want them in, either in 2s, in 4s, in singles, in, all over the place, doesn't really matter, as long as you understand the way that you can set this up to manage what you need to achieve. We will come back for any questions on this one at the end, because I think that will be where the most of the questions are. If we want to make sure we confirm the field ourselves, this is where we would enable pending registration. And this, we would see this more so with payments. So when we allow pending, all golfers will be added to pending list, or we could have a subset of golfers with the following custom field. So you may have VIP members that automatically go in and the rest of the field doesn't. The general sense would be this is basically waiting for the organizer, the customer manager, the tournament director, whatever you want to be called, to approve everyone into the event. Okay, so once you've ticked that, everyone gets the pending notification, and then you can go in and approve them. And this is used a lot with the associations, a lot of social clubs that run month to month at the moment. If they're uncertain about an event with payments, they will run it as pending and then approve everyone 7 days out when they know they can go ahead. They're just some of the functions of what you need to do and be aware of, obviously, as the system is there for it, and with COVID playing havoc to event registrations. So again, tournament waivers, we will cover this off specifically, but if you had a specific tournament waiver set up back in here, you could then enable that, which would mean that every entrant or every person entering must agree to the tournament conditions. So some of these we see are social media and imagery, digital imagery waivers. Some are tournament conditions, some are competition conditions, some are refund conditions. So you've got total control over that, and then you can add which one you want to put, and you can also have multiple ones. So you could add both of those in. And then that would mean that the registrant must tick, yes, I agree to these, and they'll be able to read through them at that point of registering. If we have a look now, what information do we want to require? So we've ticked here members and non-members. So we have 2 different forms. So with a member, their information would be in their profile and would be pre-populated. And we may not want as much out of the members because we know them, but the basics will be obviously first name and last name are compulsory, but email, golf link number, gender, that's going to allow you to set the tee, retrieve their handicap, and communicate with them. You may want mobile phone, which I'll just tick cell phone for this instance. And what this is going to do is it's going to take that data out of their master roster profile and sit it with them in this event as a subset. Okay, so don't think if you don't tick it, it won't come into the actual event. It may be in their master roster, but for the event communications, you do need to bring these pieces of information in. The member won't have to fill it in. They can edit it if it looks wrong to them. However, it will come across, they see their fields populate and they can just complete their entry. So it's a very smooth process. We don't have any eligibility criteria, but if it was a men-only event, you could say it's only for men. If it was a handicap range, you could use the handicap maximum minimums. If it was a senior event, you could calculate the date to say minimum 50 on certain date, maximum, no maximum. So things that you can set up there as long as you've got those that member data. In the non-member form, you may want to get a little bit more information. Obviously, you want their golf link number. You may want their home club, and this is where you can start to add in custom fields. So we'll add a custom field of home club, and give it a one-line answer. And we're not going to include this in the membership, the member form, but we are going to require it in the non-member form. So that way we now have a separate question that the visitors, guests, whatever you want to call them, are going to have to answer in their form, okay? And the little bars on the right, you can move that around depending on, you know, where you feel that should sit. So as a rule of thumb, we sort of go through email, first name, golf link, all the golf specific stuff, and then we start with the personal information. We'd come down to, you know, home club, and then if you had anything else that you wanted from you know, maybe a marketing point of view, potentially, you know, what's your favorite golf ball? Are you a member of a certain buying group? Those sort of things, you can add those in if there's that commercial requirement for your event. Okay, so quickly, we'll just have a quick break here. Any questions on the registration without payments, and then I'll move into some of the intricacies on payments. So if you've got a question, unmute yourself and fire away.
It's Arthur. I assume that you would, this procedure would be linked to whatever date tournament you put in on the setup page.
In terms of date of birth? Or
No,
sorry.
all this information would be linked back to the tournament date that you put in. Is that right?
Yeah. So if there's anything date specific in terms of, you know, your age as of a certain date, but you can change that to be closing date of a tournament or, you know, the end of this year. It depends. But yeah, the date is obviously whatever date we've set here in the round. But there's not a lot of date specific information. It's tournament specific. And then you can, if you're using the eligibility based on a certain date, you control that date, because every event's going to have that, you know, let's say a seniors event, maybe first of the first. So every event within the season, Golf New South Wales will have a different rule to say a senior division within a society/social club, right? So, you know, that's where we give you that ability to change that. So I hope that answers that one, Arthur.
Yeah, I think so. Thanks, Seth.
Yep. Any other questions?
I have a question, yeah.
Yep.
Just with the pending and where they go on the pending list, so I would assume that you would be sending invoices for payment, being in the fact that
no, okay. you can do it as a normal, you know, let's say it's $100 per person and you've registered yourself, you're going to get a pending charge on your credit card for $100. And once you are approved, which is managing the wait list, managed wait list. So once you come in here, you know, everyone will be on the wait list, and you'll get the ability to say who's in. And over here, you know, there's golfers down here, and you will confirm and charge. So because this has no payments, I do this a lot with one of the junior tours that we run or help run. Everyone's pending. We go through it. The day the entries close at 5 o'clock, at 5:05, we confirm everyone into the field and charge their credit card. So it's also a nice way of keeping the payments for the organisers going through their Stripe account into one big lump sum versus drip feeding 100 today, 300 tomorrow. So it's a lot easier to balance out that Stripe charge when it hits your bank account in one go. Yeah,
so because we currently charge, we use, well, we're moving to the next one anyway, so that's okay. I'll just leave it there. That's fine.
Yep, no worries. Any other questions before we move to payments?
I've just got a question. It's Julie from Teed Up with regards to the format of the date of birth. Is it changeable so that you can do it in the Australian version rather than the US?
Not at this point. Not at this point. That's one legacy to being a US product, is that the date of birth will always reflect the US way. You can, when they're selecting it, it's from a date picker, so it's just the way it's displayed. But we have that request has been made a number of times on what we call our product backlog. to internationalize that product, that part of the product. So there's a couple of parts of the product that are still US centric, but they've obviously got some flow on effects. It's not as easy as saying just flip the date. We've got a lot of regional settings. So it has been mentioned a lot of times, and it's probably one of the highest ranked, but it's got to fit in with the the other development that's going on across the board. So we always push it, but it's something that is still functional. Everyone has to just understand that's the way it's displayed.
Yeah, I mean, we're aware of it, but it would be great. So, all right, thanks very much.
No worries. All right, well, we might move on to the intricacies of payment, and on what we've got here. So obviously we've still got the registration set up as it is, but now we have the registration payments. So, and I'm conscious of time. So what we've got here is we've already set up 2 payment options. So we have a members event entry of $100 for 1 member, being a person from the master roster, as we explained before. And then we have a non-member registration, which is 150. And obviously that is what we would term a guest or anyone that's not part of the master roster. You can set limits on these. So we could come in and we could say there will be available 100. Let's say our the field size was 100. So we might say there is able to be 60 members and save that. And then we would only allow 40 visitors. So you can see the difference here. So once we've filled up that, then those members, if the 61st person there, that would go onto the waiting list as a member. So we would have 2 different waiting lists. In terms of what we're seeing here is obviously 1 member and 1 non-member, but what about that scenario where a member can register a non-member? So if we have a look at how we set these up, again, it's very similar, but you need to say what the registration includes. So it would be 1 to potentially 4 members and 0 to 3 guests. And we come back to this same scenario. Do we want them in 2s and 4s? Do we want them in 4s? Do we want it to be any combination up to 4? And then you need to be careful here that we're using the per individual. So the member would be 100 and the guest / non-member would be 150. So if Tim came in and registered Tim and Peter White, he would be charged $250. Peter White being a visitor, Tim being a member. Once we've moved through there, obviously you can select your refunds, and automatic refunds are a process that you set up in your customer center. If you have a refund policy, 30 days out, 100%, 15 days out, 50%, inside 30 to 15 days, sorry, it might be nothing. You can set that up and then just tick that. But I think most people in Australia will set it up as refunds, manual refunds, so they can control it. And we've seen a lot of people just take a $5 fee out of any refund after the closing date to cover the Stripe fee. Description, you can place in here anything, give them an explanation, or includes is very popular. Includes, golf in cart, lunch, prizes, whatever it may be. Get your spelling right, unlike me. You can write it as a sentence. This is going to display next to the entry form dot which you select. So once we'll have a look in the portal in a second, and that will be the explanation that the players will see. All right, so that's important there. And if you do, we've seen this a number of times. We have seen when people clone an event, one of the biggest issues with cloning the event is they bring through the payment options from the event they're cloning from. and that may have been a member's a member event, and now they have a non-member component, and so their registrations are always a little bit messed up. So when we're cloning, one of the good things to remember, this is slightly off topic, but when you're cloning an event, what will we call it, registration. I'll put it in there. We don't want the players because we're looking for a new set of players, and I would always untick the payment options. That will take you all of 2 or 3 minutes to recreate, but that way you know you're creating them for that event rather than having a legacy from a different event that may not be correct. And that's where people sometimes get into a lot of trouble when they go live, that they haven't actually checked what those options were relating to that event. So you would untick that, click next, select your date, and on you go. So that's one of the tips and tricks that, we can get lazy cloning. Everyone clones, it's great, but they're probably the 2 biggest things to untick. So once we come back here, if we have a look now at how that would look. And yes, for all those with lots of graphic ability, that's a terrible photo that we should update. And if you see that and you have a better photo, obviously general portal settings, you can change it from right here. So new registration, this will present me with 3 options. And you can see these 2 had no description. This one has a description underneath. Obviously 1 member, 1 non-member, or the combination here. And you can see how it breaks it down, makes it very simple. So when we click next, we would select the member, and that would preload that information that we asked for. And then we have that option to add another player or add the guest, where you see you're presented with blank fields to enter all the required information. If you didn't want to do that, bang, tick that, confirm. The tournament waivers would come in here as well, where they would confirm their consent. Click next. And then you'll be required to pay. Oh, Australia. And you see it's picked up, it's charging 2 by 100. Okay. Visitors, customers won't see that. The customer managers are the only ones obviously signed in as admin. We can skip payment. That button would not appear unless you've opted to allow them to do that. Okay. So the general view there doesn't have that. As it says, managers can skip the payment. So again, if you wanted to register on behalf of someone, you could do that. We don't advise you putting credit card numbers in for customers under PCI compliance, but each to their own. You would allow them to skip payment, and you may send them an invoice later on, which we will cover in another call. So we'll exit out of there. So that's the basis of obviously running registrations with payment. The trick is to make sure that your payments reflect the combination of golfers that you want. And of course, if it's an open event, then you don't really need to worry about members. Everyone's considered a guest. And sometimes in that sense, a member can register. They will be picked up within the system for all their participation history because the same email is used as a member and a guest. So don't worry about that. Sometimes it's just easier to just have one payment across the board. So that is an option as well. But I think we've covered off a lot of that. As we're getting close to time, and I want to take some questions. I think we'll talk about round signups and opening signups and creating a round sign-up invoice in the next session. It's sort of a subset of what we do here. It's not commonly used, so I think it's an add-on to what most of you guys are doing. But we're running out of time here. I do want to open it up for questions. So we'll cover that off in the next one. So any questions about the payment setup there, guys?
I do have a quick one.
Yep.
Just in the edit section of that, which we didn't touch on, in the edit as an administrator, it comes up, everybody comes up without a name. It comes up as a, whatever they ticked as a, on that front page. So it's very difficult to actually, to
Where's
see
that
who
for?
in there when you click into the edit registration, one below. Yeah.
Yeah,
So those that,
Norm's saying, I know what you're saying, Norm, here. Basically, it shows
Yep.
the packages that have been bought, not who bought them.
correct. Yeah.
So if we go through, just quickly register 2 players. Okay, so now if we were to head back to the home page.
The person themselves sees their name, but we don't, because they obviously only see one. We see both.
Yeah, that's your admin view that you're seeing slightly different to the player themselves.
Yeah.
So if we have a look here. So Norm, you're saying when you come in.
That's what I see. I see 60 people with that in that scenario, but when I click onto them, I don't get to see. So I see a lot in there that are people have gone and they've gone to register, pulled out, and there's just so many sitting in there that have got nobodies to them, but
Right,
I can't.
so incomplete.
Yeah, just can't. Yeah.
I mean, the process of the portal view of editing registrations is for the players to come
The
back in.
registrant, yeah.
Yeah, it's not really designed for the admin, because we've got the system in here where we would then come in and check the registration payments.
Check them through there, yeah.
And check them through here. So obviously this is one thing that if people are unsure where to check, so it's a good point you've raised here, Norm, we go to the registration report.
Yep.
And that will give us a breakdown, and you'll see that here, paid by other means. So what we would mean by that, maybe at a golf club, Peter wants to take it off his account and the club's agreed with that. Maybe Peter wants to pay cash instead of credit card, whatever it may be. Yep. I mean, for simplicity, and this is not just in your case, Norm, for simplicity these days, we think everyone should pay up front because it puts them, commits there, rather than we do see a lot of people complain that once they, if they haven't paid, they get, tiniest bit of rain on the day before and they pull out, and all of a sudden your event's lacking the full field because of that. Those golfers that are made of sugar and are going to dissolve in the rain. So that way, they're in. So we don't advise skipping payment unless, it is a scenario that the organisers are happy with. So this is where you would go and you would have a look here. And obviously if there was a refund payment or transfer payment from here, we could do it. All right.
No, that's all right.
Perfect. Hope that helps, Norm.
Yep, that does.
All right.
I do have one more on that
I'll
subject,
fire away.
if we could. When people do book, I've got members that book in 2 members, like a husband and wife. One of them comes up as showing as not confirmed.
Yeah, so you're talking about that in the roster, right?
When it gets to the
in the status. So that's.
I know it's further down the track a little from that.
So you can see here that both, in this case, Tim and I are both registered within the master roster. So that's why we're here. So if a golfer is not registered through, you've got some different statuses here. You'll have registered, not registered, registered, not confirmed, meaning they haven't accepted their invite to have, the sign-in option. Right. It's only, this will reflect how they sign into the app, whether they need a DGID or they can sign in with their email and password.
Correct. Thank you. Yep.
Okay.
Answered. Yep.
Perfect.
Magic. Thanks.
Any other questions, team?
Yes, I've got one, Peter. Just going back to
Virginia?
Just going back to the wait list and pending lists. can I actually set up a tournament and do the teams before those players are confirmed into, as paying? Or do I have to wait until after they are off the
No,
wait list and into
You
the?
have to wait. So when you use pending registration, the golfers, where is it? This one here. That one here, no. But when you're using it, you'll have that wait list, managed wait list. So the golfers aren't actually part of the roster until you've confirmed them off the wait list, which means that you might have here, it'll be 0 golfers, but your pending list will have 60 on it. Now, you can't create a team list until those golfers move from wait list to the actual roster.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
if you're
I seem
running,
to remember you telling me that before, but I just wanted to confirm it because we've got an event coming up.
yeah, so what you would need to do there is obviously just have enough lead time where you're going to confirm and charge everyone to make sure that the teams are in. I think, is that your Arundel Hills event?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, we're set entries to close 7 days out. So that's where you need to bite the bullet and charge everyone and then make your teams. So,
Yep.
All right.
Yep. Thanks, Pete.
No worries. Any other questions?
Yep, I'm good.
Everyone all good?
Yeah. All good.
All righty. So we will be sending out, the next round of invites with what we're going to do. Tim's normally in charge of this, but Tim, you've heard his voice a couple of times, but it is 7:30 in Hong Kong in hotel quarantine for Tim, hence why I've done the session today. So Tim will be picking these back up once he gets back into some form of freedom up in Hong Kong. So just a tad early, the 9 a.m. Australian time up there when you're stuck in a little 2x2 hotel room. So everyone, thank you for joining. If there's any other questions you didn't want to raise on the call or you wanted to take offline, just flick them through to Tim or I. So peter.shaw@golfgenius.com or tim.orgill, ORGILL @golfgenius.com. And we will come back to you via email and we'll upload this recording into the portal